Kind of a weird inside number, but that is 45, and that's the number of comments I had when I tweeted about the Tigers drafting Paul Skenes. And I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on that because I think this is going to be a fun discussion. Me and Uper talked about this on the last pod. Uper, I think you called him, he could be the next Garrett Cole. I think that's the guy you use, but I mean, I said he could be the next ace for the next decade. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on this? I think this is a fun topic that got some people a little upset, and I think it's with draft coming up. I think this is a good time to talk about Paul Skenes because I think he's going to be an interesting talking point.
So what you're saying basically is you're getting a lot of commentary of do not draft a pitcher, right? That's what you're hearing?
A lot of people were I got some pretty rude comments, to say the least.
I don't care because, quite frankly, the Tigers have been able to develop pitching at any round, not necessarily every round, but they've been able to develop pitching to a certain extent to make themselves competitive. That being said, they need bats. If this is a draft that is so offensively deep, you can get pitching later. You don't need Skenes. You don't need them. Skeet, whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't need that. What you need, Skenes. I did say his name wrong. We don't need a pitcher, okay? Look at the offensive talent in the top 10 alone. I mean, even if they get Kyle Heel, the catcher out of Virginia, I honestly, at this point, any bat that can be impactful within a year or two, I'm not talking the 3 or 4 year route, within a year or two, do it.
Not to pull a chef here, but it makes me think back to the Lions from when John was a little bitty toddler. And they drafted wide receivers 3 years in a row. It was Charles Rogers, Roy Williams, and then Big Mike Williams, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think correctly. And Rogers was a bust. Roy Williams was solid, and Mike Williams was a huge bust. And then they had 1 year off. I don't know. Was that when they took Stafford? I don't remember who they took in between. But then they had the top pick again, and there was Calvin Johnson staring them right in the face. And people were like, you can't take a wide receiver again. And they're like, well, if he's the right player, you can. And I think that's the way that Tigers fans feel. Like under Avila, it was so much pitching they were drafting, and none of it really worked out. But Skenes does seem like a different animal. As Yoop said, he's probably the best pitcher in the draft since Garrett Cole. Some people say since Strasburg, who was the greatest, draft prospect ever, basically. At the same time, yeah, I'm not crazy about drafting pitching high up in general because you just have to look back at the last couple of years, and it's not. People always talk about the risks of high school pitching, but it's basically the same with college pitching the last few years. Look at the top names from the last couple of drafts. Max Meyer went 3rd overall in 2020. He's out, barely pitched. Asa Lacy has been a disaster. Emerson Hancock hasn't reached the majors yet. You go to last year. Who was the pitching in the early rounds last year? Or 2021. I'm sorry. You've got. Let's see, Sam Bachman. He just made the majors, but he's not been looking good. Will Bednar, Michael McGreevy, Gunnar Hoglund, Jordan Wicks. I mean, Gavin Williams has been good, but that's a guy that the Guardians got the 23rd overall pick. It does feel like you can get pitching whenever.
Here's what I think. I believe that the Tigers will take a hitter. Okay, I really believe that. However, my thinking is you cannot live in the past. You have to have conviction about what you're doing in the present. Yes. Do it over again. There's no way you take Jackson Jobe, okay? Do it over again. Probably don't take Casey Mize. But Paul Skenes is doing some things, and I talked about Strasburg on last week's show too. I was a huge fan of Strasburg. I watched as much. It was harder back then to see it, but I worked my ass off to see every Saturday the highlights of what he was doing. It was amazing. Skenes is basically doing that, except he's doing it in the best conference in baseball. The guy's a horse. He's a large guy. He's never had the arm issue in the past like Mize did. If they end up, if somehow Langford and Cruz go 1-2, and the Tigers are sitting there at 3, and their choices are the 2 high school guys or Paul Skenes. If they elect to go with Paul Skenes, I'm not going to argue much, even though I probably would like Walker Jenkins because that swing looks gorgeous.
kind of my thing too. I'm a really big Wyatt Langford fan, but if him and Dylan Cruz go 1-2 and Paul Skenes is sitting there at 3, I mean, we talked about this in terms of pitching. We don't really have the Tigers don't have that true ace, that true guy that can sit at the top of the rotation. Maybe Mize, School, or Manning could be that. Maybe Jackson Jobe could be that. But I think Paul Skenes, like I said, you can't live in the past. And what Chris just said, if they're tanking again this year and they're going to have another top draft pick, if Wyatt Langford and Dylan Cruz are their two guys and neither of them are available, I wouldn't be mad with them taking Paul Skenes. Obviously, you're going to have to put trust in Scott Harris and this front office to be able to identify. I mean, Raj sent me a video of Pedro Martinez identifying Casey Mize before he got Tommy John. He was basically was able to predict that Casey Mize was going to have to get Tommy John because of the way he threw the ball. You hope that this Tigers front office is able to identify that and look at Skenes and to be able to identify this is a guy we think that's going to be able to stay healthy or he's not. I think that's just how much faith you have in this front office.